There comes a moment in every person's life when holding on becomes heavier than releasing. Some people hold on to pain because it feels familiar. Some hold on to failure because they fear beginning again. Others hold on to relationships, memories, expectations, regrets, anger, or the versions of themselves that no longer exist. But life moves like a river, and anything we try to grip too tightly eventually slips through our hands. The art of living peacefully is not found in controlling everything around us. It is found in learning how to let go. This audiobook is a journey through the emotional weight people carry every day without even realizing it. It is about releasing the thoughts that drain energy, the emotional wounds that shape decisions, and the fears that quietly steal joy. Letting go is not giving up. It is not weakness. It is not forgetting. Letting go is understanding that peace matters more than attachment. It is choosing freedom over emotional imprisonment. Through 10 connected chapters, this journey follows the emotional transformation of the human mind and heart. Each chapter uncovers a different layer of attachment and reveals how people can slowly reclaim calmness, confidence, and emotional clarity. The journey begins with understanding why people struggle to let go and ends with discovering how freedom creates a lighter and more meaningful life. The purpose of this audiobook is not to tell listeners to stop caring. It is to teach them how to care without losing themselves. Every chapter is designed to feel personal, reflective, and emotionally engaging so listeners can recognize their own struggles within the stories and lessons shared. By the end of this journey, listeners will understand that letting go is not the end of something valuable. Sometimes, it is a beginning of everything they truly need. Chapter 1. The Weight We Carry. Most people wake up every day carrying invisible baggage. They carry conversations that ended years ago, disappointments that still sting, regrets that replay endlessly, and fears that quietly shape every decision. The strange thing about emotional weight is that it becomes so familiar people stop noticing how heavy it truly is. They learn to survive with it instead of questioning whether they were ever meant to carry it in the first place. A person may smile at work, laugh with friends, and continue living normally while silently carrying emotional burdens that exhaust them from within. These burdens are often hidden beneath routines and distractions. Many people stay busy not because they are productive, but because silence forces them to confront the emotions they have avoided for years. The mind becomes crowded with unfinished emotions, unresolved pain, and expectations that no longer serve any purpose. Holding on often begins with fear. Fear tells people that if they let go of pain, they will lose part of their identity. Someone who is betrayed may continue reliving the betrayal because it has become part of their story. Someone who failed may replay the failure endlessly because they believe it defines their worth. Emotional attachment forms when pain becomes familiar, and familiarity can feel safer than change. The human mind also struggles with the illusion of control. People convince themselves that if they keep thinking about the past, they can somehow change it. They replay arguments, imagine different outcomes, and create alternate versions of events. But the past remains untouched no matter how many times it is revisited. The more energy spent trying to rewrite yesterday, the less energy remains for living today. Many people are taught from a young age to suppress emotions instead of processing them. They hear phrases like stay strong, move on, and stop being emotional. As a result, emotions are buried instead of understood. But buried emotions do not disappear. They wait beneath the surface and slowly influence behavior, relationships, and mental peace. Emotional weight often reveals itself physically. Stress tightens the body. Anxiety interrupts sleep. Resentment drains energy. The mind and body are deeply connected, and emotional burdens eventually affect every aspect of life. People who cannot let go often feel emotionally exhausted without understanding why. There is also comfort in attachment, even painful attachment. Letting go means stepping into uncertainty. It means accepting that something meaningful has ended or changed. The human heart resists endings because endings create grief, and grief can feel unbearable. But what many fail to realize is that refusing to let go creates a slower and more permanent suffering. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack every single day. At first, The weight feels manageable. Over time, the body adapts to it. Eventually, carrying the backpack becomes normal. But the moment it is removed, the body suddenly realizes how exhausted it truly was. Emotional burdens work the same way. People often do not realize how deeply drained they are until they finally release what they have been carrying. The first step toward letting go is awareness. A person cannot release emotional weight they refuse to acknowledge. Many individuals spend years blaming others, circumstances, or bad luck while avoiding deeper emotional truths. Healing begins when someone becomes honest about what they are carrying and why. Some people carry anger because they fear vulnerability. Some carry guilt because they believe punishment makes them responsible. Some carry heartbreak because they fear loneliness more than suffering. Emotional attachment always has a hidden reason beneath it. Understanding that reason is essential. Life constantly changes. Relationships evolve. Opportunities disappear. People leave. And seasons shift. Suffering often comes from resisting these natural movements of life. People cling to what once was instead of embracing what now is. The tighter they hold on, the more painful the experience becomes. Learning to let go does not happen in one dramatic moment. It begins quietly. It begins when someone finally admits they are tired of carrying emotional weight that no longer serves them. It begins when they stop glorifying pain and start choosing peace. Freedom does not arrive when life becomes perfect. Freedom arrives when a person no longer allows past pain to control present happiness. The journey ahead is not about forgetting the past. It is about learning how to stop living inside it. Chapter 2. Why we fear letting go. Fear is one of the greatest reasons people remain emotionally trapped. Even when pain becomes unbearable, familiarity often feels safer than uncertainty. The mind naturally seeks comfort, even if that comfort exists inside suffering. People stay attached to old wounds because those wounds feel predictable. Letting go means stepping into the unknown, and the unknown frightens the human mind. One of the deepest fears people experience is the fear of losing identity. Human beings often define themselves through experiences, relationships, and emotional struggles. Someone who spent years in a painful relationship may not know who they are without that relationship. Someone who built their identity around success may feel worthless after failure. Attachment becomes dangerous when people confuse what happened to them with who they truly are. The mind also creates emotional stories that reinforce attachment. A person may tell themselves they must hold on because doing so proves loyalty, strength, or love. But there is a difference between loyalty and self-destruction. Many people remain emotionally connected to situations that continuously hurt them because they fear being seen as weak if they walk away. Another common fear is the fear of regret. People wonder what might happen if they let go too soon. They replay possibilities endlessly. Maybe things could improve. Maybe the person will change. Maybe the opportunity will return. The imagination creates countless scenarios that trap individuals in emotional limbo. There is also a powerful emotional addiction connected to pain. Emotional highs and lows can become deeply addictive because intense emotions create stimulation. Some people unconsciously seek chaos because peace feels unfamiliar. When someone spends years living with stress, heartbreak, or anxiety, calmness can feel uncomfortable at first. Social expectations also influence emotional attachment. Society often praises endurance without questioning whether the struggle is healthy. People are told to fight for relationships no matter what, chase goals endlessly, and never quit. While persistence can be valuable, blind attachment can destroy emotional well-being. Childhood experiences shape how people respond to emotional loss. A child who grew up feeling abandoned may cling tightly to relationships in adulthood. Someone who experienced emotional neglect may seek constant validation and fear rejection intensely. Many adult emotional patterns are simply unresolved childhood fears wearing adult disguises. The brain itself resists change. Familiar patterns create neural pathways that become comfortable over time. Even painful habits can feel automatic because the brain prefers predictability. This is why letting go often feels emotionally exhausting at first. The mind is adjusting to a completely new emotional reality. Fear also convinces people that letting go means failure. But releasing something harmful is not failure. Sometimes the bravest decision a person can make is choosing peace over attachment. Walking away from pain requires enormous courage because it demands self-respect. People often fear loneliness after letting go. They worry that without certain relationships, identities, or routines, emptiness will consume them. But loneliness and solitude are not the same thing. Loneliness comes from emotional disconnection, while solitude can become a place of healing and self-discovery. When people finally begin releasing attachment, they often experience emotional discomfort. Doubt appears. Memories resurface. The urge to return to familiar pain becomes strong. This stage is normal. Growth rarely feels comfortable because growth requires transformation. Letting go is not about forcing emotions to disappear overnight. It is about slowly teaching the mind that safety does not depend on clinging to the past. True security comes from within, not from circumstances, people, or outcomes. The fear of letting go loses power when people realize something important. Holding on does not guarantee happiness, healing, or protection. Sometimes, holding on only guarantees prolonged suffering. Freedom begins the moment someone chooses to trust themselves enough to move forward even without certainty. Chapter 3. Releasing the past. The past has a strange way of following people into the present. A painful memory can suddenly return during an ordinary moment. An old regret can quietly shape new decisions. A past failure can create fear that prevents future growth. Many people live physically in the present while mentally remaining trapped inside events that ended years ago. Memories themselves are not the problem. The real problem begins when people emotionally relive the past every single day. The mind turns old pain into a permanent emotional residence. Instead of learning from experiences and moving forward, people become emotionally frozen. Regret is one of the heaviest emotional chains. People replay moments repeatedly, wishing they had spoken differently, chosen differently, or acted differently. They create endless alternate realities inside their minds. But no amount of thinking can rewrite what already happened. The truth is that everyone makes mistakes. Human beings are imperfect by nature. Growth only becomes possible because mistakes exist. Yet many individuals punish themselves for years because they cannot forgive who they once were. The person someone was 5 years ago was operating with the awareness, fears, and emotional maturity they had at that time. Judging the past version of oneself through present wisdom creates unnecessary suffering. Growth means becoming wiser, not remaining trapped in self-punishment. Painful memories often remain powerful because they were never fully processed. Instead of feeling emotions honestly, many people distract themselves. They stay busy, numb themselves, or avoid emotional reflection entirely. But avoided pain does not disappear. It waits patiently beneath the surface. Healing begins when people allow themselves to feel honestly without judgment. Sadness, anger, disappointment, and grief are not signs of weakness. They are natural emotional responses. Emotions become destructive only when they are denied, suppressed, or allowed to control behavior endlessly. Forgiveness is another essential part of releasing the past. Forgiveness is widely misunderstood. It does not mean approving harmful behavior. It does not mean forgetting pain. Forgiveness means refusing to let past wounds continue controlling emotional peace. Resentment creates invisible emotional prisons. The person carrying resentment often suffers more than the person who caused the pain. Anger consumes emotional energy and quietly affects mental health, relationships, and happiness. Some people resist forgiveness because they believe anger protects them. But constant emotional defense prevents emotional freedom. Healing does not require pretending nothing happened. It requires choosing not to carry the emotional poison forever. There is also grief attached to lost time. Many people mourn years spent in unhealthy relationships, careers, or emotional states. They feel ashamed for not leaving sooner or changing earlier. But healing cannot happen while someone constantly attacks themselves for the past. Every experience, even painful ones, teaches something valuable. Hardship often reveals personal strength, emotional patterns, and deeper truths about life. The goal is not to erase the past, but to stop allowing it to dominate the future. People often wait for perfect closure before moving on, but life rarely provides clean endings. Sometimes there are unanswered questions, unfinished conversations, or unresolved emotions. Waiting for complete closure can keep someone emotionally trapped forever. Real closure often comes from within. It comes from accepting that some chapters ended without the explanation or justice desired. Acceptance does not erase pain instantly, but it removes resistance. The past should become a lesson, not a permanent home. Memories may remain, but emotional suffering does not need to remain attached to them forever. Letting go of the past creates space for new experiences, healthier relationships, and emotional peace. People cannot begin a new chapter while continuously rereading the old one. Freedom begins when someone decides that their future deserves more attention than their past. Chapter 4. Letting go of toxic relationships. Human beings are deeply emotional creatures, and relationships shape much of life's emotional experience. Healthy relationships provide support, trust, encouragement, and peace. But unhealthy relationships slowly drain emotional energy, damage self-worth, and create constant emotional confusion. One of the hardest truths people must accept is that not everyone is meant to remain in their life forever. Some individuals enter life to teach lessons rather than stay permanently. But many people continue holding on long after relationships become harmful because emotional attachment can feel stronger than logic. Toxic relationships do not always begin painfully. Many start beautifully. There may be deep connection, excitement, affection, and hope. But over time, manipulation, disrespect, emotional neglect, or control slowly appear. The difficulty comes from remembering who the person once was and hoping they will return to that version again. Hope can become emotionally dangerous when it keeps someone trapped inside ongoing suffering. People convince themselves that love alone can fix everything. But healthy relationships require more than love. They require respect, emotional safety, communication, and mutual effort. Many people stay in unhealthy relationships because they fear loneliness. They believe losing the relationship would hurt more than remaining inside emotional pain. But staying connected to constant negativity slowly destroys inner peace. Emotional dependency also makes letting go difficult. Some individuals rely entirely on another person for validation, identity, or happiness. This creates imbalance because emotional stability becomes dependent on someone else's behavior. A toxic relationship often creates emotional exhaustion. There may be constant anxiety, overthinking, emotional unpredictability, or fear of conflict. Instead of feeling supported, a person feels emotionally drained. One of the clearest signs of an unhealthy relationship is when someone consistently loses themselves trying to keep the relationship alive. They sacrifice personal boundaries, emotional needs, and self-respect to avoid abandonment. Boundaries are essential for emotional well-being. Without boundaries, people allow others to repeatedly cross emotional lines that damage mental peace. Healthy boundaries are not selfish. They are necessary. Some relationships become toxic because both individuals carry unresolved emotional wounds. Unhealed insecurities, fears, and traumas often create cycles of emotional conflict. While compassion is important, no one should sacrifice their emotional health trying to save another person who refuses to grow. Letting go of toxic relationships can feel similar to grief. Even when someone knows the relationship is unhealthy, emotional attachment still exists. There may be memories, shared experiences, or dreams connected to the relationship. Healing after emotional separation requires patience. Many people romanticize the past during lonely moments and forget the emotional pain that existed consistently. The mind often remembers emotional highs while minimizing long-term suffering. True love should not require constant emotional survival. Peaceful relationships do not leave people feeling emotionally broken every day. A healthy connection encourages growth rather than emotional collapse. Walking away from toxicity is an act of self-respect. It is a declaration that emotional peace matters. Choosing distance from harmful people does not make someone cruel. Sometimes it is necessary for healing. Not every relationship that ends is a failure. Some endings are acts of protection. Some endings create room for healthier connections and deeper self-understanding. When people finally release toxic relationships, they often rediscover forgotten parts of themselves. Their energy returns. Their confidence slowly rebuilds. Their minds become quieter. They realize how much emotional space was occupied by constant stress. The purpose of relationships should never be emotional imprisonment. Relationships should add peace, meaning, and emotional support to life. If a connection continuously destroys inner calm, letting go may become the healthiest decision possible. Chapter 5. Releasing the need for control. Human beings naturally seek control because control creates the illusion of safety. People plan carefully, predict outcomes, and attempt to manage every detail of life in order to avoid pain or uncertainty. But life is unpredictable by nature, and the constant need for control often creates more anxiety than peace. Many individuals spend enormous emotional energy trying to control situations, people, and outcomes they were never truly capable of controlling. They worry endlessly about the future, overanalyze conversations, and attempt to force life into specific expectations. When reality unfolds differently, frustration and disappointment appear. The need for control often develops from fear. Someone who experienced instability earlier in life may become obsessed with certainty. Someone who experienced betrayal may try to control relationships to avoid emotional pain. Control becomes a defense mechanism against vulnerability. But control has limits. No one can fully control how others behave, how life changes, or what challenges appear unexpectedly. Trying to dominate every uncertainty creates constant mental exhaustion. One of the most destructive forms of control is attempting to manage other people's emotions and choices. People try to fix others, change them, or convince them to become who they wish they were. But true change only occurs when someone personally desires growth. Accepting this reality can feel painful because it forces individuals to release unrealistic responsibility. People are responsible for their own actions, boundaries, and emotional responses, but not for controlling the entire world around them. Perfectionism is another hidden form of control. Many people believe they must perform flawlessly in order to feel worthy or secure. They fear mistakes because mistakes expose vulnerability. But perfection is impossible, and constantly chasing it creates emotional burnout. Life itself is filled with uncertainty. Relationships evolve, careers shift, health changes, and unexpected events occur without warning. Resisting uncertainty does not eliminate it. It only increases suffering. Acceptance is not passive surrender. Acceptance means recognizing reality honestly instead of fighting against what already exists. When people stop resisting every uncertainty, emotional energy becomes available for growth and peace. Trust is essential in releasing control. Trust does not mean believing everything will always go perfectly. It means believing in one's ability to handle life even when things become difficult. People often believe control protects them from pain, but attachment to control usually intensifies emotional stress. Overthinking becomes constant. Anxiety grows stronger. The mind never fully rests because it continuously searches for possible threats. There is freedom in understanding that not every outcome must be controlled to create happiness. Sometimes life unfolds beautifully in ways no one could have predicted. Nature itself demonstrates this truth. Seasons change naturally. Rivers flow without forcing direction. Trees release old leaves to create space for new growth. Life moves continuously, whether people resist or not. The more tightly someone grips life, the more tension they experience. The more they learn to adapt and trust, the lighter they feel. Letting go of control does not mean abandoning responsibility. It means focusing energy on what can actually be influenced while releasing obsession over everything else. Peace begins when people stop demanding certainty from an uncertain world. Freedom appears when they realize they do not need to control every outcome in order to survive or thrive. Life becomes far more beautiful when experienced instead of constantly managed. Chapter 6. Healing emotional pain. Pain is one of the most universal human experiences. Every person, regardless of background or success, eventually encounters heartbreak, disappointment, grief, rejection, or loss. Emotional pain changes people. Sometimes it strengthens them. Other times it causes them to close their hearts completely. Many individuals spend years trying to escape emotional pain instead of healing it. They distract themselves through work, entertainment, unhealthy habits, or constant busyness. But avoidance only delays healing. Emotional wounds are similar to physical wounds. Ignoring an injury does not heal it. In fact, neglect often makes the damage worse. Emotional pain requires attention, honesty, and compassion. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing healing should happen quickly. Society often pressures individuals to move on rapidly, especially after loss or heartbreak. But emotional recovery follows no perfect timeline. Grief itself is deeply personal. Losing someone or something meaningful creates emotional emptiness that cannot simply disappear overnight. Healing does not mean pretending the loss never mattered. It means learning how to continue living while carrying the lessons and memories differently. Pain often changes how people see themselves. Rejection may create feelings of unworthiness. Betrayal may destroy trust. Failure may damage confidence. Over time, emotional pain can quietly shape identity. This is why self-compassion is essential during healing. Many people become their own harshest critics during difficult periods. Instead of offering themselves patience, they judge themselves constantly. Healing requires emotional honesty. People must allow themselves to feel sadness, disappointment, fear, and anger without shame. Suppressed emotions eventually resurface in unhealthy ways. There is also a difference between feeling pain and becoming consumed by it. Healthy healing allows emotions to move through the mind naturally without permanently defining identity. Support from others can play an important role in recovery. Genuine connection reminds people they are not alone in their struggles. Sometimes healing begins simply because someone finally feels understood. Forgiving oneself is often harder than forgiving others. Many individuals hold on to guilt for years because they believe self-punishment somehow creates redemption. But endless guilt only prolongs suffering. The human heart is remarkably resilient. Even after tremendous pain, people can rebuild trust, rediscover joy, and experience peace again. Healing does not erase scars, but scars often become reminders of survival rather than weakness. Time alone does not heal emotional wounds. Conscious healing does. Reflection, emotional processing, healthier habits, supportive relationships, and self-awareness all contribute to recovery. Pain also teaches valuable lessons. It reveals emotional patterns, unhealthy attachments, and personal strengths that may have remained hidden otherwise. While no one desires suffering, difficult experiences often create deeper wisdom. Some people fear healing because pain has become familiar. Letting go of suffering can feel strange after carrying it for so long. But emotional freedom becomes possible the moment someone believes they deserve peace. Healing is not linear. Some days feel calm while others reopen old emotions unexpectedly. This does not mean progress disappeared. Emotional recovery naturally moves in waves. Eventually, pain loses its control. The memory may remain, but the emotional intensity softens. Life slowly expands again. Laughter returns. Hope reappears. The purpose of healing is not becoming emotionally numb. It is becoming emotionally free. Chapter 7. Letting go of expectations. Expectations shape much of human disappointment. People imagine how relationships should unfold, how success should appear, how others should behave, and how life should progress. When reality differs from those imagined outcomes, frustration and suffering often follow. Many individuals unknowingly create emotional pain through unrealistic expectations. They expect constant approval, perfect relationships, predictable success, and permanent happiness. But life rarely follows exact plans. Expectations themselves are not always harmful. Goals and hopes provide direction and motivation. The problem begins when emotional well-being becomes completely dependent on specific outcomes. Relationships often suffer because of unspoken expectations. People assume others should automatically understand their needs, emotions, or sacrifices without communication. When those expectations remain unmet, resentment develops. Parents may expect children to follow certain paths. Partners may expect mind-reading levels of emotional understanding. Friends may expect loyalty without offering the same support themselves. One of the greatest emotional freedoms comes from understanding that people cannot always behave according to personal expectations. Every individual carries unique experiences, fears, and limitations. Social media intensifies unrealistic expectations by constantly presenting idealized versions of life. People compare their real struggles to carefully edited images of success, beauty, and happiness. This comparison creates emotional dissatisfaction. The desire for perfect timing also creates suffering. People expect careers, relationships, and achievements to happen according to strict timelines. When life moves differently, they feel behind or unsuccessful. But life unfolds uniquely for everyone. Comparing journeys only creates unnecessary pressure. Some opportunities arrive later. Some lessons require patience. Expectation also affects self-image. Many people create impossible standards for themselves. They believe they must always be productive, successful, attractive, or emotionally strong. These unrealistic expectations create constant self-criticism. Acceptance becomes essential in releasing unhealthy expectations. Acceptance means recognizing reality honestly instead of fighting against it emotionally. This does not mean abandoning ambition or lowering standards completely. It means balancing hope with emotional flexibility. People who constantly resist reality often remain trapped in frustration. They focus more on how life should be rather than engaging with how life actually is. Unexpected experiences sometimes lead to the most meaningful growth. Many individuals discover new paths, relationships, or opportunities only after original expectations failed. Gratitude also helps reduce attachment to expectations. When people focus entirely on what is missing, they overlook what already exists. Gratitude shifts attention toward present value instead of constant emotional dissatisfaction. Letting go of expectations creates emotional space for surprise, growth, and peace. It allows people to experience life more openly rather than constantly measuring reality against imagined outcomes. The world does not owe anyone perfect outcomes, but life still offers beauty, connection, growth, and meaning when approached with openness instead of rigid demands. Freedom begins when people stop trying to force life into exact shapes and instead learn how to move gracefully with change. Chapter 8. Rediscovering Yourself. When people spend years attached to pain, unhealthy relationships, expectations, or emotional struggles, they often lose connection with themselves. Their identity becomes shaped by survival instead of authenticity. Many individuals eventually reach a point where they realize they no longer recognize who they are. They have spent so much time pleasing others, chasing approval, or carrying emotional burdens that their true desires and personality became buried. Letting go creates emptiness at first, but that emptiness is not something to fear. It is space. Space allows rediscovery. Self-discovery requires honesty. People must ask themselves difficult questions. What truly brings joy? What values matter most? Which parts of life feel authentic, and which feel forced? Many people live according to expectations placed upon them by family, society, or fear. They follow paths that provide approval but not fulfillment. Rediscovering oneself often begins with solitude. Quiet moments reveal thoughts and emotions hidden beneath constant distraction. While solitude may initially feel uncomfortable, it eventually becomes a place of clarity. Passions forgotten for years sometimes reappear during healing. Creativity returns. Curiosity awakens. Individuals begin reconnecting with interests and dreams they abandoned long ago. Confidence also slowly rebuilds during self-discovery. Toxic environments and emotional pain often damage self-esteem. But healing allows people to remember their value beyond external validation. Boundaries become stronger as self-awareness grows. Individuals learn what behavior they will no longer tolerate. They stop sacrificing their emotional health to gain acceptance. Rediscovering oneself also means accepting imperfection. Authenticity is not about becoming flawless. It is about becoming real. Many people wear emotional masks for years. They pretend to feel okay when they are hurting. They suppress emotions to appear strong. But true strength comes from emotional honesty. Growth often changes priorities. Things that once felt deeply important lose significance. New values emerge. Inner peace becomes more valuable than constant validation. Self-love is another important part of rediscovery. Self-love is not arrogance or selfishness. It is treating oneself with respect, compassion, and care. People who genuinely value themselves make healthier decisions. They choose relationships that support peace rather than chaos. They pursue goals aligned with personal meaning rather than social pressure. Rediscovery is not about becoming someone entirely new. It is about reconnecting with the parts of oneself hidden beneath fear, pain, and emotional attachment. Every human being carries unique strengths, dreams, and emotional depth. But those qualities often remain buried under years of emotional survival. As healing continues, people begin experiencing life differently. They laugh more freely. They speak more honestly. They stop apologizing for existing authentically. The journey of letting go ultimately leads inward. By releasing what no longer belongs, people finally create room to become who they were always meant to be. Chapter 9. Embracing Change. Change is one of life's few guarantees, yet many people spend enormous energy resisting it. Human beings crave stability because stability feels safe. But life continuously evolves whether people feel ready or not. Relationships shift. Careers transform. Dreams change. People grow older. Seasons pass. Nothing remains exactly the same forever. Resistance to change often creates more suffering than change itself. People cling tightly to familiar routines, identities, and emotional attachments even when those things no longer support growth. The fear of change usually comes from uncertainty. The future cannot be fully predicted, and uncertainty makes the mind uncomfortable. But uncertainty also contains possibility. Every major transformation in life requires some form of release. A new beginning cannot fully emerge while someone desperately clings to the old. Nature constantly demonstrates the necessity of change. Trees release leaves during autumn not because they are weak, but because release creates survival and renewal. Rivers continue flowing because stillness eventually creates stagnation. Many individuals remain emotionally stuck because they confuse familiarity with happiness. Just because something feels familiar does not mean it is healthy or meaningful. Growth often requires leaving comfort zones behind. New opportunities, relationships, and experiences usually exist beyond fear. There is also grief attached to change. Even positive transformations can create sadness because they involve endings. Moving to a new stage of life often means leaving another stage behind. People sometimes avoid change because they fear failure. They prefer familiar discomfort over uncertain possibility. But avoiding growth slowly creates emotional emptiness. Adaptability is one of the greatest strengths a person can develop. Flexible individuals recover more effectively from challenges because they understand life cannot always be controlled. Change also reveals resilience. Human beings are capable of surviving far more than they initially believe. Difficult transitions often uncover inner strength previously unnoticed. Perspective plays an important role during change. Some people see change as threat while others see it as opportunity. The meaning attached to change influences emotional response. When individuals stop fighting every transition, life becomes less emotionally exhausting. They begin trusting their ability to navigate uncertainty. Change often removes things that no longer align with personal growth. While loss can feel painful initially, it sometimes creates space for healthier experiences. The future remains unwritten. This truth can feel frightening, but it can also feel deeply freeing. No painful chapter defines an entire life permanently. People evolve continuously throughout life. New passions appear. Emotional maturity grows. Priorities shift. Letting go becomes easier when people understand that change is not the enemy. Stagnation is. A meaningful life is not built by resisting every transformation. It is built by learning how to move with life while remaining grounded internally. Chapter 10. The Freedom of Letting Go. At the beginning of this journey, letting go may have seemed frightening. Releasing pain, Relationships, expectations, and emotional attachments can feel like losing pieces of oneself. But as healing unfolds, something remarkable begins to happen. The weight slowly disappears. People who learn to let go often describe feeling lighter emotionally. Their minds become quieter. Anxiety softens. Emotional energy returns. Freedom does not mean life suddenly becomes perfect. Challenges still exist. Pain still appears occasionally. But emotional suffering no longer dominates every moment. The greatest transformation occurs internally. People stop seeking constant validation. They stop allowing past pain to define present identity. They stop chasing control over everything outside themselves. Peace becomes more important than proving something to the world. Letting go teaches emotional resilience. It reveals that happiness does not depend entirely on external circumstances. Inner stability becomes stronger. Many people spend years believing they need certain people, achievements, or outcomes in order to feel complete. But true completeness begins within. Freedom also creates emotional presence. When the mind is no longer trapped in regret or anxiety, people experience life more fully. Conversations feel deeper. Simple moments become meaningful again. There is beauty in emotional release. Forgiveness softens the heart. Acceptance quiets resistance. Trust replaces constant fear. Some listeners may still feel afraid of releasing certain attachments. That fear is understandable. But holding on to pain forever only delays peace. Life is incredibly short. Too many people spend precious years emotionally imprisoned by memories, resentment, fear, or unhealthy relationships. Letting go is ultimately an act of choosing life over emotional survival. Strength is not measured by how much pain someone can carry. True strength is measured by the courage to release what no longer serves growth. As people heal, they begin attracting healthier experiences naturally. Confidence grows. Relationships improve. Emotional clarity strengthens. The journey of letting go is ongoing. There will always be moments requiring release. Life continuously changes, and emotional flexibility remains essential. But once someone experiences the peace that comes from emotional freedom, they no longer wish to return to constant attachment. There is tremendous power in accepting what cannot be changed, releasing what destroys peace, and focusing energy on what truly matters. The goal of life is not to avoid every emotional wound. The goal is to continue growing without allowing pain to harden the heart permanently. Every ending creates room for a new beginning. Every release creates space for something lighter. The person listening to this audiobook may still carry emotional burdens today, but healing remains possible. Peace remains possible. Freedom remains possible. And sometimes, the most beautiful chapter of life begins the moment someone finally decides to let go.